Question number 1. Stephen Ministry is not new at St. Paul's. I used to serve as Stephen Minister when Reverend John Francis was here. The question is, tell us about how this ministry came to be and what kinds of experiences you had with this work. I'm not sure how the ministry came to be because I was not involved in its formation. However, I was involved in the formation of my own spiritual life at that time, and I was exploring churches to commit to. This program I noticed in a brochure in Dixon House, and it attracted me right away. I've pulled some paperwork from my dusty files and folders and books from that time, and what a Stephen Minister is a child of God who walks beside a hurting person, a caring Christian friend who really listens, and a layperson who has received the 50 hours of training in order to provide this distinctly Christian care. I noticed it was not a counselor or a therapist, not a problem solver, and not a casual visitor. This framework appealed to me on every level as a person who was looking for more personal development and a way, I think, to be of service in a Christian community. The kinds of experiences I've had with this work, even though I only had one care receiver after my training, I went on to use it primarily in my own life. Many of you, or some of you, may know I'm a longtime caregiver to my husband who has primary progressive multiple sclerosis, and this happened similarly at the time of my Stephen Ministry training. So the truth is, I've used it as one of my primary ways of being a caregiver for 20 years. And also my many friends and family members, I believe, have benefited from the skills I learned and the knowledge I learned in the training of Stephen Ministry. And my relationships have benefited, I think, and the people in my circle have benefited exponentially from this training. So while it's an in-parish Christian-based program, I can rest assured it filters very easily out into the rest of our lives and strengthens all of our relationships. My next question. Leslie, one can argue 50 hours of training seems like a lot. How would you convince someone this is worth doing? What comes to mind first is St. Paul's Choir and the amount of time that the wonderfully dedicated choir members dedicate to that ministry. Next, I think about the rummage sale and how many hours over the summer typically parishioners dedicate to the endeavor of the rummage sale, and on and on and on. I bring this up as a way to say, when we are feeling called and there's something in our heart that connects with something out there that is an offering, we make it work. 50 hours on the surface does seem like a lot. And we wonder, how do we incorporate that into our already jammed lives, jam-packed lives full of commitments? The only thing I can say is, for me, it was the most natural thing for me to do because I was so drawn to it. So because of that drawn towards something, that's how we fit it in. And it goes by not necessarily quickly because it is a lot of work, but anything worth doing in our lives, I think we could all agree, we're willing to put the commitment in because we are fascinated by the process and drawn in by what we're learning, and we're excited to see what happens afterwards. My next question is, Leslie, how do you express interest in becoming a Stephen minister, and what is the time commitment expected when you are assigned a care receiver? The way that I would express interest in becoming a Stephen minister is to speak to the rector or the assistant rector. And since we are soon to be having a new rector, we're in a little bit of a transition, but Dan is here, Dan Klein is here, and you could speak with him about it. And also the people who will be in charge of setting up the program. And through the advertising that we will be doing on the website and presumably around the church property as people filter back into in-person church time, I would imagine the contact people will be there, so it would be very easy to know who to speak to if you were interested in becoming a Stephen minister. As far as the time commitment after the training and after being assigned a care receiver, it's 1 hour a week visiting the care receiver's residence or an agreed upon public place. And then twice a month, I think, there is a commitment of an hour or two, I don't quite remember, where the people that you train with come together. So it's a twofold it's a twofold experience, for lack of a better word. So the experience of meeting with your care receiver once a week with them for an hour, 4 hours a month. Then, because we all need our own support, even though this is a totally confidential ministry and nobody except the rector and maybe the person in charge of the program, nobody knows who any of the care receivers are, which is critical. But we need, the Stephen ministers need ongoing support. And so there's a whole structure and a whole framework that Stephen Ministry offers to give those of us who are trained as Stephen ministers the guidance, the support, the camaraderie when we run up against challenges, when we find we reach a point where, oh, this might be something where I feel like I'm over my head. It's all vetted and discussed to determine, do we need to bring in professional help? There's a resource that will be set in place so that professional people can easily step in if necessary. Going on a little bit on that detail, but to try to say to you that never ever do you, as a potential Stephen minister, have to worry that you're going to be in over your head and that you're getting yourself into a situation that you thought was fine, and then once it's there, it's not. It's always fine because we always are supported. It's just this wonderful building block support system that starts with the person in need and then builds upon the person who is there to support the person in need. It's beautiful. My last question, is there anything that I would like to add to the interview today, and any words of encouragement to both potential caregivers and care receivers? The first thing I would like to add is, not only was I trained as a Stephen minister and was assigned a care receiver and was able to go through that process in that orientation, but I also, a few years later, needed my own Stephen minister when things got very challenging with my husband's illness and our journey together. And I came to be given a Stephen minister, and then I was the care receiver. And I think there may have been maybe one or two other people who were trained as Stephen ministers who then subsequently found themselves in a challenging life situation and needed their own care receiver. So how about that? It works both ways. And I wanted to add that and mention that. Additionally, I'm thinking about the timing of having this ministry return to St. Paul's as the world is slowly, finally coming out of this global pandemic called COVID-19, and a very challenging landscape on many fronts we are all seeing. When I look at some of the topics that were the topics that we learned during our training, I want to just share a couple of them, the titles of them. See how this sounds to you. The art of listening, feelings, yours, mine, and ours. Process versus results in caregiving. Assertiveness, relating gently and firmly, and maintaining boundaries in caregiving. So while that is all the formality and building blocks of Stephen Ministry, my gosh, aren't those things we all might be looking for? Are those words that make us calm down a little bit and feel a little more relaxed? We've been communicating so much through Zoom and text and email, losing kind of a lot of the nonverbal communication. At least I have over this past year, working remotely, fully in this little room, and not seeing anybody for 15 months really. And it just feels like a great opportunity and great timing to allow this kind of communication to flow back into the parish and to give our new rector added support in a lay ministry. And it's well, I guess that's all I have to say. A little bit of a bumpy ending, but I think I'll end there. Those are the additional thoughts. So I hope you'll consider it. I hope you'll consider if any of what any of us are saying today resonates with you. You'll consider exploring Stephen Ministry as something to incorporate into your life.